$200 million on the table from the Cleveland Browns, and Shedeur Sanders said no. Not because the number was wrong, not because the years weren't right, because when Stephen A. Smith is on national television saying Shedeur Sanders should be the #1 quarterback on the Cleveland Browns depth chart, and Cleveland's own media is simultaneously invoking the Fifth Amendment rather than name sources for character attacks, $200 million starts to look like a number attached to the wrong organization. The Denver Broncos don't have that history. Denver didn't spend 6 months running anonymous smears about film habits. Denver didn't have reporters turning a birthday gift into a Godfather reference on live television. Denver didn't produce an information operation so coordinated that even the head coach, sitting in front of reporters at the NFL owners' meetings, couldn't hide his exhaustion with it. In the moment First Take said what Cleveland media refused to say, the writing was already on the wall.
You got to give him a chance with the money you owe him, the money you paying him, because you can't give him away, to be honest with you. That's the only reason I'm saying that. But Shedeur Sanders did end the season. But my answer to this question would be Deshaun Watson.
Headed into the season, Shedeur Sanders should be the #1 player at the quarterback position on the depth chart for the Cleveland Browns. Now, does Deshaun Watson get an opportunity to compete? Absolutely. What you can't do if you're Jimmy Haslam, what you can't do if you're Todd Monken is chase the contract. You can't chase the money. You have to look at the film and say, this is who Deshaun Watson has been in a Cleveland Browns uniform.
Stephen A. Smith, national television. Shedeur Sanders should be the #1 player at the quarterback position on the depth chart. The same player Cleveland media spent 6 months trying to bury, validated on the biggest sports debate show in America, and the Browns responded with a $200 million offer. Shedeur responded with Denver. But here's what nobody is connecting. This rejection wasn't about the Broncos. It wasn't about the money. It was about what happens when an organization lets its media market run a 6-month smear campaign against its own franchise quarterback, and then acts surprised when that quarterback decides the price of staying just went up beyond what dollars can cover. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why $200 million wasn't enough and who in Cleveland built every condition that made this rejection inevitable. And the receipts on how this media market treated Shedeur Sanders, while the national football world saw something completely different, are all right here.
Yeah, April Fool on the Cleveland media. Mary Kay, Jason Lloyd, Tony Grossi, and everybody out there that was saying that Dillon Gabriel would be a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. He was further along than Shedeur Sanders. April Fool. April Fool. This is a April Fool joke on the Cleveland media. This is a April Fool video. This is a April Fool show from B. Watts to all of you who out there said that Dillon Gabriel was a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. Let's listen.
April Fool. That's what 6 months of Cleveland media coverage just became. And the player they spent all that time trying to bury just rejected $200 million to prove it. Before we break down every layer of what drove this decision, you need to understand the gap. Because there are 2 parallel realities that existed simultaneously in the NFL this offseason, and the distance between them is exactly the size of the problem Cleveland created for itself. Reality 1, the national football world. First Take, Stephen A. Smith, R.C. Shea. Analysts who watched the tape, studied the results, and drew the obvious conclusion from a rookie who finished the season winning 2 divisional games with 0 preseason reps and almost no first-team work all year. Reality 2, Cleveland Browns media. Anonymous sources, no names, no footage. Character attacks about film habits delivered by reporters who invoked the Fifth Amendment when asked to back them up. Those 2 realities cannot coexist forever, and Shedeur Sanders just chose which one he believes
And some of the highlights we saw from Shedeur Sanders, the ability to lead this team, the ability to stay tough and fight and get through the adversity, to me, allows him an opportunity to lead the clubhouse at the quarterback position. And it does seem that Todd Monken has some sort of kinship relationship with Shedeur Sanders, and I believe that should be explored before going back to Deshaun Watson in some way trying to justify the money that we guaranteed him when acquiring him from Houston.
Todd Monken has some sort of kinship relationship with Shedeur Sanders, and that should be explored before going back to Watson to justify the money. National television said plainly, while Cleveland's own reporters were asking Monken about porcelain horse statues. Now let's talk about what the national football world actually sees when they look at Shedeur Sanders, because the contrast between that assessment and the Cleveland media narrative is the entire reason this rejection makes sense. Stephen A. Smith did not come to the Shedeur conversation as a fan. He came as someone who has watched Deshaun Watson collapse in real time, who watched a player go from being mentioned alongside Patrick Mahomes to producing one of the most catastrophic quarterback situations in recent NFL history. And from that vantage point, from someone who has seen what elite QB play looks like and what its absence looks like, his verdict on who should be leading this offense was not ambiguous.
Wow, listen, I'm inclined to say Shedeur Sanders because he finished the season, and Deshaun Watson has been so bad in a Cleveland Browns uniform. But because of the money, RC, Shay, I'm inclined to try to at least give the man one more chance. I'm not telling you to start him without him showing what he could do in training camp and preseason. But my eyes are like, I'm praying and hoping that he lives up to his billing to some degree. I can't believe what a precipitous drop-off we've witnessed when it comes to Deshaun Watson in the Cleveland Browns uniform. When he was in Houston, it got to a point where it was like Patrick Mahomes, and then Deshaun Watson was right there with everybody else.
I can't believe what a precipitous drop-off we've witnessed. That is Stephen A. Smith describing Deshaun Watson's tenure in Cleveland in language that makes the owner's great chance comment look completely disconnected from the evidence. And immediately after that observation, he landed on the same conclusion that Todd Monken's rep distribution, building presence confirmation, and public framing have all been pointing toward. Shedeur Sanders, number 1 on the depth chart. That verdict came from the outside, from people with no agenda in Cleveland, from analysts who watched the tape and followed the logic. And while that verdict was being delivered on national television, Cleveland's media market was still running the same anonymous source operation that produced 0 verifiable claims and 1 Fifth Amendment invocation. That gap between what the national football world sees and what Cleveland media produced is the environment Shedeur Sanders has been operating in. And the Broncos are offering him an exit from it. But here's the accountability piece that nobody wants to say directly, because this rejection has a paper trail, and the paper trail doesn't lead to Shedeur Sanders. It leads to 6 months of decisions made by the people who covered this team and the people who let them operate without consequence. Dillon Gabriel was called a supercomputer. He was handed first-team reps. He was presented as the obvious answer to Cleveland's quarterback question, while Shedeur Sanders was buried 4th on the depth chart, throwing to ball boys during individual drills without the courtesy of actual wide receivers to work with during training camp. And then reality arrived, and it looked like this.
And just 8 months ago, everybody was saying Dillon Gabriel was farther along at that quarterback position than Shedeur Sanders. The media was out there pushing Dillon Gabriel with the help of the former head coach, Kevin Stefanski, telling us that Dillon Gabriel was supercomputer smart, pick up the offense better than Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders seemed like he ain't interested, he ain't putting in the work. We don't know if he want to be a starting quarterback or not. But guess what? It's April. It's April the 1st. And why are they not saying the same thing now? Ha! Looked like Dylan Gabriel pulled an April Fool on them. Yeah, it's April the 1st.
Once those shoulder pads came on, once the preseason started and the lights went on, Dylan Gabriel showed the entire NFL what Shedeur Sanders fans had been saying since before the draft. And the same media that called Gabriel a supercomputer quietly moved on to the next narrative without a single correction, a single retraction, or a single acknowledgement that they had spent months promoting a quarterback who couldn't complete passes against air in training camp. And Kevin Stefanski, who was the engine behind the Gabriel elevation, was fired and walked into his next job admitting on camera that he made mistakes he wished he could take back. The entire apparatus that produced the anti-Shedeur narrative is either gone, discredited, or standing in a radio studio pleading the fifth. And the player at the center of it rejected $200 million from the organization that allowed all of it to happen. That is not a coincidence. That is cause and effect. Now here's the part that should make the Browns front office genuinely uncomfortable. Because the Denver angle isn't just about escaping a bad media market. It's about what Denver represents as a football opportunity, and why a player in Shedeur's position would look at the Broncos and see something Cleveland hasn't been able to offer. A fresh start, a coaching staff that didn't inherit the Watson contract, a city without 6 months of anonymous source attacks on record, and a franchise that would bring Shedeur in as the unambiguous answer, not as a fifth-round afterthought competing against a $230 million ghost who hasn't played meaningful football in 2 years. And the national analysts who have been most accurate about this situation just delivered the frame that explains everything.
We're talking about what they are now and what they've shown us recently, and Deshaun Watson has not displayed good play.
So using my female investigation skills, I do know that Todd Monken says that they could perhaps go younger at the quarterback position. I forget if he said it at the Combine or at the league meetings, which would lead me to believe that Deshaun Watson maybe will not be the start of this upcoming season.
We aren't saying the same things about Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson because of what they used to be. That is the double standard laid out in one clean sentence. Watson gets the benefit of the doubt because of Houston. Shedeur gets the anonymous source campaign because of Cleveland. And the conclusion that Monken going younger at QB means Watson probably won't be the starter is the organizational signal that makes the Broncos' offer even more significant. Because if Cleveland is moving towards Shedeur anyway, why does he need to take their money on their terms after everything that happened? The answer is he doesn't, and Denver just proved it.
It's two things. I get where you're coming from, RC. Can't argue with that. It's two things, though, that I think works in Deshaun Watson's favor. It's a miracle that you got to dig deep to find it, but it's two things. Number one, the skill set that he once displayed was on an elite level.
Yes.
What he once did, we've never seen Shedeur Sanders do. That's number one. And number two, as bad as Deshaun Watson has been, he only played in 19 games out of 68 for the 4 years.
Two things working in Watson's favor: skill set ceiling and injury-related hope. That is the thinnest possible argument for a starting quarterback. And Shedeur Sanders just looked at that argument, looked at $200 million, looked at Denver, and made the only decision that makes sense for a player who spent a year proving everyone wrong while being treated like an afterthought in his own building. $200 million. Rejected. Not because Shedeur Sanders doesn't want to play football in Cleveland, but because the price of staying, the personal cost of continuing to operate inside a media environment that spent 6 months building a smear campaign with sources it couldn't name, finally exceeded the number on the contract. The national football world saw what Shedeur Sanders was from day one. Stephen A. said it on First Take. R.C. Shea said it. Todd Monken showed it through every public statement he made about this QB competition. And Cleveland's own media spent 6 months telling a different story, a story that just ended with $200 million left on the table and a plane ticket to Denver. The Browns had a franchise quarterback. They let their media market try to destroy him, and now they're finding out what that decision actually costs. The next video covers what Cleveland does next and whether the organization can course correct fast enough to keep the one thing this franchise has needed for 30 years. That video is right here. Drop a comment. Did the Cleveland Browns media just cost this franchise a generational quarterback? Or is $200 million from Denver too good for Shedeur to turn down, regardless of what happened in Cleveland?